City Secretary Harold Shank predicted 30,000 voters would turn out for the runoff. And checking over the records this morning, he found he wasn't far off. He and 3 city councilmen went over election results showing 28,000 Dallasites cast votes to put Lucy Patterson and Adeline Harrison in the winner's spots. CCA President John Sholkoff, whose candidates captured 9 of the 11 council seats, sat in on the canvassing. Afterwards, I asked him if the runoff had the CCA worried that its power was slipping.
I've been scared for 2 years, ever since West Wise beat us 2 years ago, or really even before that. The surveys that we have taken shows that the CCA strength has been on the decline in the last 4 or 5 years. I hope that's changed now, and we can do the things that we need to do to stay strong.
What are you going to do?
Well, I need, of course, first to talk to the executive committee and a number of other people in Dallas. My own inclinations are to organize on a year-round basis and to get a higher degree of organization and maybe even get a director. I don't want us to change from our traditional position, though, of leaving the members of the council alone.
Shortly after the canvassing, the City Council met to formally accept the election results. Losing candidate Clay Smothers told the council his heart was broken over the election. He asked the council to pass an ordinance prohibiting businessmen who contract with the city from making campaign contributions to council candidates. Mayor Wes Wise told Smothers he was wrong if he was implying that councilmen dole out favors in return for contributions. Wise said he turned down $8,000 in his own campaign because he didn't want to owe anybody anything. Martha McIntyre, Channel 8 News on the Move.
Charter revision, holding zoning meetings, perhaps in the evening. I hope that they'll take a look at the zoo fee. This was a major issue. And I really feel that we're going to work toward better city-county cooperation because this was an issue defined. But the thing that I really want to see on the next council is an inclusion of the citizens of this community in the planning process. You know, I talked about the concept of accessible politics. The citizens of this community are demanding that they be included in the planning process of major projects, not appraised of them after the fact.
Racial slurs like this cartoon cannot be tolerated in Dallas in 1973. Racism may have been a standard procedure in this town in the past, but it's time that Dallas grew up. No community can call itself great and at the same time permit its institution to practice racism.
These high-rise apartments are due to be completed in September. The building will contain 184 apartments for the elderly, but according to official sources, these apartments, plus the 2 others operated by the Dallas Housing Authority, won't begin to meet the overwhelming need for low-cost apartment housing for the aged. Because of the federal government's 18-month moratorium on new construction of this type, the Dallas Housing Authority says it can't build any more housing for the aged anytime soon.
At the Brooks Manor Apartments for the aged in Oak Cliff, the manager, W.W. Willingham, says they've got a long waiting list of senior citizens wanting to get in apartments.
Here at Brooks Manor, we have 232 apartments. They're all occupied. We have no prospective move-outs. I have a waiting list of approximately 1,200 names. And the only way I can get to another person is for some person who's already living here move.
Mary Weinstein is one of the occupants of Brooks Manor. She considers herself lucky to have gotten an apartment when there were vacancies. Mrs. Weinstein fits the requirements because she is over 62 and has an income of less than $3,800 a year. Mrs. Weinstein had to sell her home and lives off that income. She only receives $70 per month from Social Security.
Oh, I don't have no kinfolks.
So you had no place to go when you sold your home?
Not a place. How long did you have to wait before you could get a room here?
Well, I came in ahead of time. I came in about 2 days before I was supposed to come in here.
How long did
But
you
I
have
had to stay with friends 3 nights. I had no place to go.
How long were you on the waiting list before you could get an apartment?
2 years, 10 months, and 5 days.
The same non-availability of accommodations applies to Park Manor in South Dallas. The director there says she has had to turn down many elderly applicants because there's been very little turnover, and that turnover tragically occurs when there's a death or when the elderly can no longer care for themselves. For Channel 8 News on the Move, this is June Gray.
The Lake Highlands United Methodist Church was filled past capacity this morning to pay a last tribute to 3 of its own. Chris Phillips, Steve Wester, and Scott Stevens had been Boy Scouts in a troop sponsored by the church. Today, the 13-year-old boys, who died Sunday, were carried in flag-draped caskets past their fellow scouts and received a final salute. It was overcast during the solemn 45-minute service, but the sun broke through the clouds as the bereaved families and friends followed the caskets borne by scoutmasters to their final resting place. Judy Hanna, Channel 8 News, Dallas.
Total percentage on that race and the change. This error will make no difference in the final outcome. And the other two errors occurred in precinct 446.
Thank you.
Many people were speculating.
I think, you know, one of the things, Martha, that happens and has happened in the
not only physically impossible, but almost financially prohibitive for any individual to reach all voters. I would hope that the new council does look. Present here, I see my duty as a citizen to bring before you. It's not my intent.
It would be great if all of us could all campaign on it.
I don't want that said. I'm going to request this of the city. As a citizen who has run very, very hard, very hard.
Yes, that you're going to, in the future, if you stay in politics, and you've already said you're going to, you're going to need those people, and you're going to need assumption that as a result of large contracts with the city, people are elected to public office. You just don't get elected to public office because of contributions from people with large contracts to the city. Now,
I hope this will come about in the next council.
Hello, how are you? So nice to see you. So nice to
Hello,
see
Miss
you.
Weinstein. How are you?
Oh, I'm just fine.
May we see your apartment?
Come on back to camera.
Jim, there'll be considerably less busing. This alternate plan, as we have termed it, will eliminate the crosstown busing, particularly at the high school level, and thus the only busing at that point will be that of students who are simply eligible for it under state law in that they live more than 2 miles from their assigned school.
What are some other major changes in the plan?
At the elementary level, the first grade, it is proposed under this program, all the first grade students will go to their home schools. Now this also will eliminate some of the busing that was in the earlier plan.
I'm always profoundly grateful when I can sit at a table with Bishop Kenneth Pope, because in 1940, in December of that year, he performed a little ceremony in the First Methodist Church in Austin, Texas, which was the culmination of 5 years of effort on my part. I finally got Nellie to the altar, and Bishop Pope joined us in what I know has been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
Excuses like that. I mean, let them jump off to a 4-0 lead, and that's what I said in other shows. I said that if we could get away, that's the name of the game in any pro sport. And
must have been bitterly disappointed after the
year. You know, the other team is better, definitely better. It's a little different.
Then that you must have at least 2/3.
Deaf people live on alternate basis. We have a plan and or adopt the act.
Be composed of no less than 2/3 of it.
Okay.
Pass it and decide, okay, we don't need to put the enabling legislation on the books, right?
Well, I was bitterly disappointed, as I said. After all, I felt that it's very important that we win the first game, but again, we lost it, and we made some very costly mistakes, which I was hoping we'd avoid in the first period, so we got down 4-0, and that was it.
You started Michel Dumas in that first game against Omaha. Do you anticipate making a change tomorrow night?
Yes, Vern, I do. I'm going to go with league-leading goaltender Mike Weiser, simply because he was the league-leading goaltender. He played very well all year long with Michel Dumas. I'm going to make a change. He earned it.
Were all of those 7 goals Duma's fault, though?
No, they certainly weren't. I really faulted them only for 1 or 2 goals. Our defense played very poorly in front of them, and our forwards weren't coming back as hard as maybe they should have been. But you certainly can't fault a goaltender in 7 goals, not the caliber type of goaltending that we have.
Bobby, as you look back, this is the first year you've had only the 4-team league, and it resulted in you winning the championship or the regular championship, and then having to sit aside for 2 weeks. It's really, I would guess, a bit unfair, isn't it?
Well, it's a little bit unfair, but that's the way it was, Vern, with the mini league, as they call it, that we had this year with the interlocking schedule with the Western Hockey League. So we had to suffer the consequences, and I believe it's really hurt us.
The officers that arrested us, they came in and they stayed for 2 or 3 hours, drank, made obscene gestures, and then arrested us and almost didn't let us get dressed good enough to walk down here. They didn't even take us in a limousine.
I don't see it at this time. I still feel what I felt all along and have been saying consistently over the past 2 to 3 months, that the new City Council is going to be of a mind to accept the 8 and 3 single-member district proposal. But remember, this is only something that would go before the voters of Dallas, and they then will decide yes or no on the single-member districts.
Of course, at this time, the county and the cities are expending funds for health services. We can coordinate these and perhaps actually save the taxpayers of this county some money. Mm-hmm. Now, the charge has been made that the city of Fort Worth wants to dump something on Tarrant County. I don't agree with this. Fort Worth is a vital part of Tarrant County, and we need to work with the city council and with the officials of the city of Fort Worth for the betterment of the people. If we don't do so, well, the taxpayers are the ones that lose. It's as simple as that.
We have literally hundreds of years of coal supply, but much of it has too high sulfur content to meet the environmental requirements. We have oil shales, but it's not quite economical yet because of price. So we're going to have to make up our minds. We're either going to suffer some shortages, or we're going to endure a little more pollution, or we're going to pay a little more for price.
comes my other boss. Because I have seen obscene acts.
Do you think that the ordinance is proper?
Well, we feel that the Texas vending is basically controlled by B&B Vending Company.
And you think that B&B Vending Company is pressuring the Vending Commission to put you out of business?
Absolutely. Positively.
Who on the commission are you making these charges against?
We're telling Ivan Williams, who is the chairman of the committee, of the vending committee, that B&B is, or that he is basically being pushed by B&B, which is run by, as I'm told, another Mr. Williams.
Senator Oscar Mosey got approval in the Senate today of a bill which would require single-member districts for the Dallas School Board. A parliamentary problem means that a final formal passage won't come until next week, but at that time it should go on to the governor because Paul Ragsdale already got the bill passed in the House. It also means you won't vote as many times because it combines the school board with the city council elections every 2 years, eliminating a primary and a runoff each year. It only applies in Dallas County. The Senate Economic Development Committee delayed by a couple of weeks progress on Governor Briscoe's competitive rates automobile insurance bill. It was sent to a subcommittee. The bill did get a hearing in the full committee today. The major hassle between witnesses involved Joe Christie, chairman of the State Insurance Board, pushing the bill for the governor, and Frank Tucker of Dallas, representing the American Insurance Association. The activity and the pressure is beginning to build now at the state capitol in Austin, with only 6 weeks left in this legislative session. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move in Austin.
So, how will the deviations either up or down affect?
Both houses could not get together on particular.
Parker claims to really be competitive, companies should be able to post a new rate and immediately use it, like a hardware store, instead of having to wait for the board to approve the new rate.
A prior approval law was not really competitive rating. This is a prior approval law we're considering. That is, you're required to get your approval before you put your rates into effect. As a matter of fact, most of the states have moved away from a prior approval law in the last few years. The concept of competitive rating is that the marketplace itself determines what the rate shall be. And I don't think that the prior approval itself or this particular bill would meet that test.
They want to make darn sure that when they get in a little bit of a pinch that they can come in here and file a new plan so that they can increase their rates. They're not concerned about us granting their deviation downward. We're going to grant those. We're going to grant them upward too. And one thing that Mr. Tucker failed to mention in his testimony, and that the chairman very wisely pointed out, that we've got an entirely different situation in Texas than in those other states that have gone to prior approval. Every year we look at the loss experiences suffered by the drivers of Texas and we promulgate the standard rates. If those losses indicate that the rate should be increased, and we're under statutory obligation to increase those rates.
The House has spent the morning on that huge appropriations bill. The third day for that bill. Speaker Price Daniel Jr. said it'll probably take 2 more days next week. Both houses have now adjourned for the Easter weekend. The House Education Committee today discussed that omnibus education finance package, which was submitted yesterday, but did not have time to finish it. The bill would allow many districts, including Dallas and Fort Worth, to spend more for education by collecting less local property tax. But of course, it would have to take more money from wealthy districts that have few students.
Fire ripped through the Groco paint manufacturing company shortly after 8 this morning, apparently started by an electrical spark that threw a solvent tank into flames. 14 employees inside the burning building escaped without injuries before the blaze could catch them. One of the employees who got out in time was the company receptionist, Mrs. Joetta Lewis. She told me what happened.
Approximately at 8:20, our plant manager, Mr. Robert Boyd, screamed to call the fire department. I picked up the phones to dial, but the lines had already been severed. I came out, started to come outside, and they started hollering as everybody out. Smoke by this time had completely engulfed the entire building. Excuse me. I tried to get the records, but it was all in my office. There was no way that I could get it out. So we got two of the 3 dogs out of the back. We came out. I stopped the young man in the Volkswagen on the road and got him to carry me to a telephone where we could call the fire department. And they were roughly here within 15 or 20 minutes thereafter.
Gallons of hot paint spilled out of the blazing building as firemen fought to keep the solvent tanks from exploding in their faces. After 2 hours, the firemen managed to bring the fire under control without a major explosion. The manufacturing company was totaled, $250,000 worth of damage. For Channel 8 News on the Move, this is Martha McIntyre.
Both of us hung on to our paddles, so that handicapped us to where we couldn't swim as much. It was easy. So I kept mine, but I think if he'd have let go of his, he'd have went ahead and been able to swim to a tree or something. I just headed for the nearest tree, tried to get out of there. And all I could see was him just trying to swim, and going down and then coming back up about 4 times. That's all I could see.